Said Rhoda Coin Elder. Let's get it.
Hey man, also like I say, this right here is evidence. All the tapes that me and Rod been doing is all evidence of all the information that we seeing. You know what I'm saying? So this pretty much is another nail in the coffin. Because when Rod said something about the Judication Act, then we went backtrack and found out that, hey, how did they reenact this Judication Act? They reenacted it through hijacking the Constitution 1789, 88. Hey, Rod, could you go in on that? So they hijacked the Constitution and they created this Judication Act, which I think was the Freemasons. And people blaming us, say, oh, the Moors did it, right? Because one bad Moor like Benjamin Franklin. Go ahead.
You gotta remember when we say Moors, we make distinctions between dirty Moors and righteous Moors.
Right.
And a lot of people get that confused and they attack all Moors. Right? Now, just for some clarification, as soon as Empress Verdiasi let the dirty Moors in, she couldn't go no further. Her infiltrators was present. Malachi was doing just fine until he opened up the Nubian Nation of Moors chapter of the Holy Tabernacle Ministries. Soon as they came in, the bullshit came. Pay attention. This is not an accident. When Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, what man pale-face enrollee in the Nation of Islam, he said the Nation of Islam has been thoroughly infiltrated by the New York Police Department and the FBI. Right? Then he publicly started naming names. But during his public address, he said, I'm not telling you nothing that the police don't know because they told me. The police gave Malcolm the names of the infiltrators to try to get him to roll on Elijah Muhammad. The audio tape is available on YouTube when the FBI went to Malcolm X to try to get him to work against Elijah Muhammad. Right? So it's not a secret. It's an open secret. It's something that's in the public domain that everybody has overlooked or neglected because it was hidden in plain sight. When it's hidden in plain sight is what we most likely to overlook. Example, everybody remember the I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, but don't nobody remember the interview he did when he was standing in the church explaining how the European peasantry was brought over and undergirded with an economic floor and mechanized their farms in order to undermine and override the farms of the people of the land. We forget about that part. We forget about what he told Harry Belafonte. I think I might have integrated my people into a burning house, right? But how did he find out? Because there's a 4-year gap from 63, I Have a Dream speech, to days before his assassination, where he's giving this speech saying, I'm not sure this non-violent stuff gonna work, but I done committed to it this far. I got to figure out a way to use it for what? To go get the check. I'm going to Washington and I'm going to get the check, right? We also forget that he said, I'm tired of fighting for something that should have been mine at birth. That means that he knew what his birthright was. But between 63 and 67, 68, what happened that made him change his position and his ideology? It's called the Great Meeting. There was a mainstream media blackout, but it was reported with photographs in the Muhammad Speaks back then and since been reprinted several times in the final call under the Minister Farrakhan. Elijah Muhammad gave him the whole scoop. We the tribes that don't got treaties. The tribes that don't got treaties is going to be treated worse than all other treaty tribes because we don't want to do business with the interloper. There's receipts on my page right now where it clearly say that it was black Indians that was working for the government, protecting the colonizers from black Indians. Let that sink in. Roll the corner. Other, what's next? You're on mute.
Hey, we got a couple videos about Benjamin Banneker, and I got all the videos you sent me. But this is another question I want to ask you. Now, when you gave me that Judication Act, and then I backtracked and found, like I said, found out that they did this ratification, which is pretty much hijacking, and right before that. And then from that, they created the Judicial Act that created the federal jurisdiction. And then so everything, if based on what the information you gave me last week in the tape we did in the Big Mama's 8, where the adjudication thing is a fraud pretty much, and people have already proven this in court, like the general, the EE General Electric Company went against a couple companies, went against them and proven that it was a fraud. So that stands the reason the Nationalization Act, copyright, the Patent Act, all these acts that came after that is all fruits of a poisonous tree, right, Rod?
Well, when the Pope rescinded the discovery doctrine, everything that follows the discovery doctrine is rendered null and void using the fruit of the poisonous tree. What do that mean, though? The fruit of the poisonous tree is this. If I rob young elder at gunpoint and take $100,000,
right,
and I take that $100,000 and I open up a dry cleaners, the dry cleaners is bringing in $10,000 a week in revenue.
right.
I'm banking it. I'm not spending it. 90 days later, that's nine. Yeah, that's like $90,000 in the bank.
Right.
Right now. They catch me, they find the weapon, and they still find some of young elder's original money in my person. So they know it ain't no mistake about it. They got the right person. I'm the one that robbed young elder. Okay, now, under the fruit of the poisonous tree, when they find out what I did with the money, right? Yep. They take my cleaners. They take my bank account. I cannot benefit from these fruits that I gained from this robbing young elder situation.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, there's two things they can do with it. Normally, if the injured party is privy to the information, which means the indictment, right? If he's privy to the indictment, that means he's a legitimate complaining party. And I was found guilty under the Restitution Act. I have to make him whole by surrendering any ill gains acquired off of young elders' stolen money. So when we go into the court and they find out, well, let me show you what he did with the money, and they're gonna draw up a financial chart. It's gonna show how much, what day I robbed young elder, how much I got from young elder, how much I spent on the dry cleaners, how much I made in my accounting process each week of dry cleaners. Right? Now, once they get done doing all of that accounting, let's say that $100,000 I robbed young elder for is now $1 million. I can't have it. They can't give it back to me. Now, where is they getting this from? It's in the Uniform Commercial Code. Until the young elder discover who it was that robbed him, under the Uniform Commercial Code, I can live off of that. But if he come back and say, hey, you the motherfucker that robbed me, right? And I was like, the gig is up, I'm caught, right? Now, according to Uniform Commercial Code, everything that I did up until this point was fine. But everything that I got that's tied to young elder's money has to be surrendered to young elder. Fruit of the poison tree applies. How do that apply to what's going on with the government? They've been sending us into servitude because prison is slavery according to the 13th Amendment.
That's right.
So They've been sending us back into bondage and voluntary servitude at an alarming, disproportionate rate to the other per capita population of the land. And by them sending us into servitude, and we not part of any agreements with them, we was not part, all of us wasn't part of the 5 civilized tribes.
That's right.
Right? The majority of us was part of the 4,995 tribes that's called foreign dependent nations, enemy combatants, belligerent tribes, non-treaty tribes, outlaw tribes. All those are different names that they use in reference to us over the years, other than the epithets that they give us for assumed nationality that we didn't take on.
No.
They don't want me to tell them I'm growth and development and that my chief flag Hoover. They want me to say I'm an American citizen and the president is my leader. He not my leader. He not my chief. Right? So I can't make an allegiance with him because he's not my chief. Mm-hmm. And my chief is belligerent to anybody in public office. Why? Because they belligerent to him first. How do we know this? Because of how they entrapped him into a made-up, fabricated case and kept him in prison for 50 years. That's how we know. They actions, right? So that's called an overt act. When you seize the leader of a tribe, that's a blatant act of war, right? We supposed to be running up in there getting our shit back, but we was under the George Washington Conjure Challenge, which was sorcery, which allowed us to be in a slumber for 200 years. We can't quite figure out what's going on. And now we can see it clearly because we no longer in the age of Pisces and all of the veils must be lifted. So all of the veils being lifted, we can see clearly now the rain is gone. We know who they are, where they came from, how they got here. We know where they settled at. We know how they set up shop. We know their motives, they MO, their modus operandi, their method of operations. We know they kind games, all of their conniving and manipulative tricknology. 120 degrees of tricknology cannot beat 360 degrees of God body knowledge of self. It can't work. Mm-hmm. It's going to be 1/3 short. Because if you got 360, you take 120 away, that leaves you 240 to work with. If your 240 degrees of knowledge itself is not superior to 820 degrees of trick knowledge, then you fake it. So I asked a question years ago. So you say you a God, do some God shit. You don't even know the difference between what gods do and what men do. Do some God shit if you want to be a God. If you're not on the status of a high intellectual capacity, you're not on your God mode yet. If you can't intuit, that means feel your way through what's being done, you ain't in God mode yet. All these people that's professing to be the chosen people of God, the sons of God, the saved people of God, and all these, they all are confused. They're not confused because they want to be confused. They confused because it was designed to confuse them of knowledge of self. So I was talking to a brother a little while ago, and he was telling me about Islam and Nation of Islam. I said, do you know why their doctrines is fundamentally different? He said, no, tell me. And I told him. The tribal rule is you can use anybody's information, but you got to make it your own. You can only stay in another chief house until you become the chief to establish your own. When we show this working in the Nation of Islam by students of Elijah Muhammad that have took what they learned from Elijah and made it their own, and they opened up their own house. You got Clarence 13X, the Nation of Gods and Earths. You got Silas Muhammad, from the new lost found nation of Islam. You got Hulan X, aka Yahweh ben Yahweh, in the Hebrew Israelites. Then you got people that detest Elijah Muhammad after he taught them how to be a man and they converted to Sunni Islam, like Siraj Wahaj. Bilal Phillips was all associated with the early Nation of Islam movements in New York. But once they got to the point where they had outgrown what they thought was a doctrine that didn't suit them, they needed that discipline. They couldn't have been a functional imam in Sunni Islam without first being disciplined because the nature of the people of the land. Because of our nature, the Nation of Islam has to have a higher level of discipline for us because we ain't easy to discipline. And we hard-headed, and we stubborn. And we don't bleed fat meat greasy even when we chewing it. And our lips is shiny. And our fingers is slippery. So we needed an excessive amount of discipline, an excessive amount of organized structure in order to be able to organize the knowledge itself into a cohesive format. A lot of people right now, they see the dirty Moors in the infiltration of our organizations. And then they blame the whole organization for the infiltrators' actions. Right? For the longest, everybody thought that Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad had Malcolm killed. Until the FBI files finally come out that two of the people that went to prison wasn't even in the location at the time. The one guy that went to prison was actually the only one he was the first one to get out. Make it make sense. He was the first one to get out, walked around New Jersey unharmed and untouched. But them other two sat in prison another 15, 20 years after that guy was roaming the streets. He passed away though, but he was the only one that was actually involved with the New York Police Department, the FBI, and the assassination of Malcolm X. The other two was innocent. They did all that time for shooting Malcolm, and it was two Negro FBI agents that was the trigger pullers. One of them was actually still standing around Elijah Muhammad after the fact. The one with the shotgun and the peacoat. He stayed in the New York mosque the whole time. While the fallout was going on, he knew he was an infiltrator. And he ain't never stopped talking bad about Malcolm. But he was the infiltrator. Right? So when we look back on it now with the FBI reports, and then we realize that all them years we was accusing the wrong people of the fall of our shining black prince. Just like Martin. We thought that some dude named what's his name? Was it Lee Harvey Oswald? No, that's Kennedy. James Earl Ray. All this time we was thinking that James Earl Ray was the trigger man in the Martin Luther King assassination until we discovered that one, the bullet didn't kill him. The doctor killed him in the hospital because it came out in court. And we discovered that this dude was charged with Martin Luther King's murder and had nothing to do with it, was nowhere near the site, and they paid him $1 million to confess and never paid his family the money, which they promised him to do. When they reneged on, all this came out in the trial. But also what came out in the trial is that Martin was set up by them niggas that was on the balcony with him.
No Ty Jesse.
And they talked about, it's another receipt if you go back a couple days on my page, where the brother was talking about how they was paid massive amounts of money to the church to bust up the cohesion by sending everybody off and giving them grants to do their own thing. All that was the fallout for Martin. But now we have people who don't understand what Martin went through saying that he was a traitor because he changed his name from Michael King Jr. to Martin Luther King Jr., just like his daddy changed his name from Michael King Sr. to Martin Luther King Sr. Martin didn't actually have a name change till he was like an adult in his 20s. But they never stopped calling him Martin Luther from the time his father changed his name when Martin was about 5. So he wasn't even using his government name at all. Guess what? When you use a nickname or a non-government name, that's a tribal name. That's your nickname is your tribal name. That means your people named you that name and it stuck because of your character and your personality. So when we're looking back on history, it's 2020, but it's clouded in a bunch of chaos to keep us confused. They had us thinking that Malcolm and Martin was in opposite ideologies. But when Dr. Clark told us that the contingency plan for the nonviolent movement was to unleash Malcolm. So they had to get Malcolm first before they get Martin. Strategic military planning. We never stopped fighting against the government, and they never stopped fighting against us. When we was complaining in the early 1900s, they didn't have it an open declaration of war on the record. They eventually put it in there where they declared war on the people. We are the people. When you see we the people, that means nappy head, woolly hair, brown skin, Aksumi Americans. Don't mean we the people as in everybody. We the people used to be the name of every tribe in their own tribal tongue, right? Even the word tribe is an exonym. We didn't refer to ourselves separate from one another because the sign language in the original native sign language for our tribal name was always we the people. So no matter, and there was another term we used called the kinfolk. The kinfolk was the ceremonial side that did the ceremonies, right? And they was the ones that ceremonial tribal members went to. They was primarily the Blue House, and they called them kinfolk because everybody in the tribe wasn't a blood member of the tribe. They wasn't in the tribe by blood. They was in there by honor. Different system, different standard. On the Red House, you had to be blood related to somebody, or you can't get in none of their tribes. That's why right now, most of the people, you could reach out to Chief Warhorse. She's not going to talk to y'all. It ain't that she acting funny. She out the Red House. If you ain't related by blood, she don't want to really F with you. She don't really trust nobody that ain't from her bloodline. That's the way that they wired on her side of the family. Right? So our rules, under the kinfolk rules, what we call our GD literature, that teaches us growth and development. And it teaches us how to recognize other tribes and how to treat the foreign tribes when they come on the land. Ambassadors is what we being trained for, right? Why do we need to be ambassadors? Because ain't nobody training us to be it. So the executive board put out the literature that actually trains us to do this work that me and Elder doing, right? I speak up for Malachi, but Malachi not my chief. Y'all gotta remember that. I speak up for Angel Bay. That's not my chief. Larry, my chief. I speak up for Prince Lowe, Four Corner Hustler, and those are kinfolk. They not my chief. But when they've been done wrong and they've been attacked by the system, I speak up for Giant Africa, but I'm not part of the movement. I speak up for Mutula Shakur, but I'm not part of the African Liberation Army. I speak up for Finney and Tupac and Huey, but I ain't no Panther. Right? I remind y'all about George Soledad Brother Jackson, and I am a gorilla. BGF Blood Oath. Right? I speak up for Asada Shakur. but I wasn't part of the new African Liberation Army. All these different people was the leadership that was working to liberate us. So I gotta know what they was doing, know if they was in the right, know how they got infiltrated. If I'm gonna come out and tell our people why we ain't got our shit, and I'm telling y'all why we ain't got it. And no matter whether you like Trump or not, I don't care neither way about it. But he doing the work we need done. He's dismantling their corporations. And Greenland is a critical part of Turtle Island that y'all don't even know. The story is told as the story of Loki and the Ice Princess. Because when Big Mama returned, that's the crown of Turtle Island. That means that the sacerdotal seat in Philadelphia is when they move across the Mississippi, right? She's still gonna have to have what's called a embassy suite in Greenland as representing the crown chakra of Turtle Island. So Trump got to get it back. He ain't got no choice. And we are saying the same thing.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
You got to remember, Dred Scott applies. We didn't have any rights that was bound to respect. Right? They couldn't give us freedom because we was never slaves. Go back and reread the Dred Scott case. The ones who was captured and given freedom was called freedmen, but they couldn't give them freedom under Dred Scott because they was already free. That's why they named them freedmen. It's also freeman, right? What's the last name? Liberator, which means one that's been liberated, right? So we got to understand that we never stopped fighting since 1492. The war never ended until now. Until now. It just evolved. When you go back to the first 300-400 years, it was bloody war everywhere they went. They couldn't go nowhere. And they was being protected by people that looked like us, that masqueraded as us. But they wasn't us. And that's why they keep calling people the Black Indians was protecting the colonizers. No. The Black colonizers was protecting the colonizers. The paleface don't start coming over here to the 1600s. Who was we fighting from 1492 to the 1600s? They don't even get into the West African slave trade until after the West African slave trade was abolished in West Africa. So they said it wasn't no palefaces that was doing slave trading over there. And they wasn't coming over here. They was taking them around across the Pillars of Hercules to the Mediterranean, where they had their slave ports at. The slave ports was in Tunis, Morocco, and parts of Egypt, going into the Middle East. And then you had the ones in Europe that was in Greece, Italy, Sicily, which just took a major water hit. Sicily did. It's an island. Sicily is also where the offspring of Hannibal and his armies, who had children with the women from the Iberian Peninsula, they was exiled to Sicily by the Roman Negroes they was fighting. If you don't know who they was fighting, then you can't put this together. You got to realize Romans didn't turn pale-faced until the 1900s. All of those emperors was all brothers, but they got to give you the token. What was it, Marcus Aurelius? They had to give you the token Negro and then paint everybody else white, so it'll look like it was an exception. Emperor what was his name? He came from Africa. And the only reason why they had to tell you he was black, because part of his rise from general to emperor, right? They told where he came from as a military genius. They said he came from Africa, so they can't paint him white. And then in that era, for us to believe a white dude came from Africa, paleface came from Africa.
Hey Rob, before we roll, we got about 5 minutes worth of videos, but it's dealing around the dirty Moors. But let me ask you this question because it's gonna set up to watch those videos. Now, could you break down the Ponzi scheme? Because it seemed to me this was a long Ponzi scheme set up by a whole bunch of infiltration for people that look like us that ain't us, and it seemed like based on all the keys you gave me and when I went to research, started looking into it, it seemed like it always lead back to the Freemasons with this black and white checkerboard flow. Like when they came out with the Nationalization Act 1790 that same year, you either was white or blackballed. You know what I'm saying? And I studied a lodge. In a lodge, when you want to join, when you got to ask a Mason, right? And then they see you do this test rigmarole. Then they vote you in, right? They vote you in by using all white balls. If you get all white balls, they bring you into the lodge. But if one person in the lodge put a black ball in there, then you can't be accepted to the lodge. So could you break down this black and white, the long Ponzi scheme, or the dude that started it and how they came up with what you was telling me earlier about the Ponzi?
Yeah. So the game is okay. First of all, let's address the checkerboard. The checkerboard is not a checkerboard. First off, checkerboard is black and red.
Okay.
That's the first thing you got to know.
Okay.
This is not checkers. This is another game. The game is called chess.
Go ahead.
Right now, in the chess game, the white pieces are on attack. The black pieces are on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Being on defense makes you Humpty Dumpty, meaning that you got the potential, but they don't want you in the white with the free white persons in law. They want to assign you to become the black piece, the civilly mortis, lost and dead at sea. That means that you was originally from the land.
Mm-hmm.
The white pieces on this chessboard are the invaders. We started off playing Battleship. If you go back, there was an announcement in the news back when Trump first took office that there was a British ship that he told they can't dock in the harbor outside of DC no more. The reason that is because we had to sink their battleship. But first we had to get rid of the guard ship. The guard ship in the bay represented the guardian ship of the Vatican that was given to the Empire of Britain, right? And they had to keep the guardian, which was a guard ship, in the bay. Now, the guard ship is protecting the ship that ran ashore, the Plymouth Rock, the Mayflower, the good ship Plymouth, right? Malcolm told us we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us, right? Because he was telling us about the international complaint that got us in this condition where we had to come up with an alternative solution than bloody war. This was the George Washington challenge. But first, they had to make a blood sacrifice. In a book called the Bible, they got what's called the blood of the righteous or first blood of the righteous. The first blood of the righteous in sorcery and blood magic mean when you invade a land, you got to get the highest ranked individual you can capture and kill him and spill his blood and use his blood to write the blood oath contract. This blood oath contract, we call it the United States Constitution, not the one that's in the Library of Congress. That was the first Constitution. This is a secondary Constitution. Now, this is the Boston Massacre after the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party, the T is the square. This is telling you that it's a hangman game about to take place. In other words, it's about to be a public execution as represented by the Boston Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party was the prelude to the Boston Massacre. The Boston Massacre culminated with the death of Crispus Attucks, and they have to tell us he was the first person to die, to shed blood for this nation. No, he was not. He was the first one of us to shed blood, that they can put us in a stupor by writing the Constitution in his blood. Right? Now, they still have to go on a killing spree because they got to get rid of everybody that remember the old ways. This is where you bring in your Black Brotherhood of Spain, right? El Español Hermanos de Negros, and your KKK, because they are the origin of the KKK. The regalia of the KKK comes from the Black Brotherhood of Spain, which was established by Moors in the Dark Ages. Okay, now, these people in the South, by the tribes, is referred to as the Black Hand, because the leader of the raids always had on that white regalia, KKK regalia, but the Black Hand was always hanging from under that white robe, and it wasn't no glove. Only thing they can tell the antiquity to identify who their attacker was to tell them it was the Black Hand that hang from under the white robe. Later, they gave pale faces black robes to mirror flip the circumstance. And this is where you get your Judiciary Act, your false judiciaries under the 1863 Charter of Savannah, Georgia, by the French King George, who became King of England. He told them to take everything from us using the law. Well, the law that they given us is predicated upon levies and liens. The lien is the contract, because when you lien, you at a slant. The contract means against the tract or against the land, but you the living land. But they want to tell you the living man because they want to separate you from Mother Earth. They want to tell the son that he don't have to honor the mother from which he came, as long as he can get the current that you can see, that paper, the green. The green is just the dye marker, right, that you put in the water to see where the current take it. And that way you can know what tributaries is coming from where in order to find out how you get into the mainstream. The mainstream is the old Mississippi, but we think the mainstream means the common collective of the pop culture. The mainstream is the Mississippi because the old Mississippians is the oldest blood of the land, with first in time being first in line, having first right to the earth rights in order for one of the sons to restore the mothers. We remember the codes, but we have to figure out how to apply them in modern times with modern circumstances and situations. But we have to go back to the old ways in order to understand the redemption process. So they gave us the grandfather clause. They told you it was a Mrs. clause with your Christmas story, but they never told you that there was a grandmother clause in law, because the grandmother clause is tribal. That's why they keep erasing everything that the tribal mothers do on the land, right? If Lucy Parsons would have had the right strategist behind her, she would have told her, if she would have sat in the sacerdotal seat in Philadelphia, she would have overthrew the conjure. But since she didn't have nobody tell her, and Empress Verdiasi didn't have nobody tell her, they couldn't stop it. Red House. Now we got to revert back to the Blue House. The Mississippi Delta Blue. Delta Blue is the Marines. Simple fact. The Marines come from the Delta as the frogmen of the Navy, which was a special forces tribe from the land. But we don't know the history of this stuff, so we thinking that these is foreigners. They operating as foreigners, but they using our old stuff to their advantage. When any special forces operations was taught and trained from the land in warfare on the land. And this is why they kept hiring people from the land and putting other people on the land that don't belong to the land in order to confuse how warfare is fought. Right? Now, once they do all of this, it's a scrambled egg now. It's going to be almost impossible to figure this stuff out. Especially with you add the paper genocide, the Trail of Tears, the Indian train that don't nobody talk about no more. And I used to hear about it all the time when I was a little boy. When the old people used to be talking about, yeah, I remember they came down and told my grandma, you got an Indian train coming. You going on? She said, I ain't getting on no Indian train. I'm staying right here on my land. That's what the people was calling it in the South. It was called the Indian train, but none of us want to get on it. And as they went through, they incorporated the children from the Indian boarding schools into the mix with the very few of us who actually went into the land. This is how they was able to develop our old culture, because they had us teaching it to them. Right? They all talk that talk. All them $5 Indians be coming out like I just blocked one today on my Facebook page, and I don't block nobody. You got to really be foul for me to block you. Right? But when he want to try to convince me I'm from Africa and he from Siberia, then we ain't got nothing to talk about. I'm not the import. Right? I'm the original. I had a conversation a few years ago with a Moor, and he was like, which tribe you from? I said, all of them. He said, what you mean? I said, my bloodline is the root stock of all tribes that's native to this land, that's original to this land. Old Mississippian blood, Aztec, Inca, Olmec, I don't care what you call them. They the same people. And we ain't never went nowhere. We still here. That's why Tupac can talk to me in a song and tell me way more than you can read in the book. And the song only 3 minutes long on average. Right? He can get more information to all of the chiefs on the land in one song than you can put in a whole book. Brother Jay, cold talker like a mug. You go listen to Brother Jay, and if you can understand the Egyptology he using, the tribal lingo he using, and the way that he's using it, he can educate you on your condition. Raquel, one of the greatest to ever do it. Follow the leader. Brother said, digging my ducks, never dug him. He couldn't follow the leader long enough, so I drug him in the danger zone. He should have ranged his own. Space in the place, it's the cuts to range the tone. It's one R in the alphabet. It's a 4-letter word, and it's about to get more complex from one rhyme to the next. Eric B, be easy on the flex. Right? They can tell us stuff. Ice Cube. He know he had Afro Chief. Right? We call him Afro Chiefs because the hairstyle now was referred to as an Afro. That's not what they was called in antiquity. They was just called Mississippians. Mississippi is not a European word, but it's coded and loaded with code. But if you don't know the code, you won't never flip the message out of the code. And I ain't going to go into decoding Mississippi because there's a lot of people that think I'm just making stuff up. They'll figure it out one day, and I'm going to be using it to my advantage the whole time. And when they figure it out, they're going to say the only way that he could have did all that, he had to know what this means.
That's fine.
Cool.
Yeah, I seen him next to that other picture.
Right behind the checkerboard floor. And notice as soon as he said the ancient ones who know the game, the checkerboard floor popped up. That's not a
But
coincidence.
they're not saying the Phoenicians. They saying with a V, right? They saying Venetians.
Venetians, yeah. That's the
With a
ones
V.
who settled Venice. The Venetians settled Venice. The Etruscans settled Tuscany. Right?
I read it.
Right. So there's two different groups. Those are the ones was sent in as in their children to civilize the European, but they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But this is a whole nother story. I don't want to go back down that road. But the whole thing they were showing you in there was how they was using infiltration, bribery, and deception the whole time. Those are different kind games. This is why you say a dude that's book smart and street smart the most dangerous one. Because he can see the game, the times they play in the corporate world, in the business world, in the politics. The average person can't see the kind in the game, so they continue to play the game in fraud. As long as you participate in the fraud, then you liable as a participant to fraud. So when the fraud come tumbling down, your world come tumbling down around you because you tied into the fraud. This is why we have to use the oral tradition to override the paperwork, because the paperwork is a paper chain designed to trap you, and the ones who sell paperwork are slave catchers. Because when you do the paperwork, in order to put somebody on notice with their own system, right? They not gonna honor that.
That's what I was thinking about too. That other
Right.
part.
So it was like what I posted the other day. When the whole system is acting in fraud and you catch it, which one of them gonna give up their lifestyle in order to honor your recognition of the fraud? No, they all acting in fraud. They can't go against the fraud they acting in because you figured it out. But the more people coattail you pull, the more people abandon the fraud, because that's the only defense to a crime. That the abandonment defense of a crime of inclusion. I mean, it's a conspiracy, a group. When you discover the fraud, you supposed to cease and desist all activities associated with the fraud, right? The only problem with the way that the system is set up through adhesion contracts, even when you think you're stepping away from the fraud, you stepping back into the fraud. So you still giving them jurisdiction, trying to assert that they don't have jurisdiction, right? You got to wait till they kidnap you first. Then you got to be a master of the habeas corpus, the great writ, right? The last person suspended it was George Bush, suspended the power of the writ. But the Constitution said that no act of government shall suspend the power of the great writ. So it was supposed to be null and void, but the courts stopped hearing habeas corpuses once you're done is done. They can only hear over it one time. And then they didn't have to accept the habeas corpus. Before they had to at least acknowledge the habeas corpus and tell you why they're not going to review the case. Right? So the suspension of the writ means that you trapped in the position of servitude. This is why, like, I'm not on no probation, parole, none of that. I did my time of walking down my parole, right? So I'm no longer a bond servant. All of the ones that still locked up is bond servants, knowingly or unknowingly. It don't matter. Everybody locked up is a bond servant. That means that there's a bond that you forced to be in service to, that's tied to you through the government, right? Now I can speak up for the ones in there where they use fraudulent means to ensnare them in their traps, right? Because if you don't know how they trapped them, you won't know how to tell the people they got trapped. So they won't be able to see that they was never supposed to be there, and that alone should be sufficient to free them. Like, they didn't say Larry told the guy, hey, go shoot this dude. That's not what he was in there for. Larry was in there because they said the dude believed that Larry needed this done, so he just took it on himself to go do
Yeah.
it. That's what Larry went to prison for. It's called influence. That law in Illinois has since been taken off the books. Right? So the law that Larry is in the state case on is no longer a law in Illinois. Fruit of the poison tree apply. When you repeal the law, you release the man.
Right. That's a fact.
Right?
They did that with the weed.
Unless you fall under Dred Scott.
Damn.
An outlaw tribe. You got to think about that.
That's right, Rod.
You got, in order for them to continuously hold you, they are acknowledging the fact that you are a tribal leader with no treaty. Yeah. And they're going to force you into a treaty agreement in order to liberate you from your bondage. And that's why Larry been in there that long, because he won't do contract business with the government. And they know this.
Yeah, he said it
perfectly. The same with Angel Bay, Jeff Ford. He wouldn't do business with the government. That whole case against him, the terrorism case, is the same case they used to murder Prince Lowe. It's the same case, the same actors. Trying to trap another prince up after they took down the king. He not going to fall for that. And when he didn't fall for it, they murdered Prince Lowe on the west side. Chicago know what I'm talking about. They lied on Jeff. They brought in some people who supposed to be code crackers, and they figured out the language of the Keystones, and they said that Jeff was giving them orders in coded messages, right? But the messages don't match what they telling you they saying.
Yeah. They said that he said go get a bazooka or all this crazy shit.
Jeff never said that.
Yeah.
Right. They got documentaries on that stuff showing you how they set it up. Jeff was already locked up when that happened.
Yeah. CIA.
He was doing a meatball, but they used that because they couldn't afford to let him hit the streets again. He had learned too much and he had become too influential in the city of Chicago. He would have been able to start organizing the tribes. Between him, King David, Larry Hoover, and Big Bull, and a few others, they would have been able to organize the whole city of Chicago in an instant to put down any resistance from the government aside from air bombing.
Damn.
You gotta remember, it was a dude that looked like us that ordered the bombing on Philadelphia move on the family of Giant Africa. Because they was going back to the tribal way of living. Because Giant Africa understood that you have to be one with the land in order for you to stay healthy and have longevity. And they trying to cut us off from the land and force us into labor camps. Right? They didn't have to blow them people up. But we don't remember the first part, though. Before they blew them up, they shot them up. We forgot about that part, though. They were sending bullets in there with women and children hiding for their life before they dropped the bombs.
Damn, boy.
We not paying attention. They never stopped warring against us. Right? We trying to follow what they call in Islam Sirata Mustaqim, the straight and narrow way. The only way that you can get out of this without going to a raw, bloody warfare is by strategy alone. You have to out-strategize the enemy. Expose his fraud to the people. While you showing the people who's behind the fraud, what they doing with the receipts. Right? That's why these oral traditions are so important. because under the oral tradition, we can use their written word to prove the corruption of their ways.
Mm-hmm.
We can show you they split tongue when they talking with two agendas by they doing two different things in actuality. They signed treaties saying one thing, but their actions did another.
Mm-hmm.
That means they came in with two agendas. They lying. They spreading falsehood. Now, the ones who are unaware are the orphans who's growing up after they did murder their parents and their grandparents with no information or no knowledge of self. Anybody that can
George Washington hats. I mean, the Fizz in the George Washington Memorial and being Bay being a traitor. Really, to me,
they are the ones. Listen, they are the ones who came from Europe and wanted to lay claim to this land. The tripartite system that he laid down is based on the 3 degrees of masonry. So you have judicial, legislative, and executive. Executive is police, legislative is lawmakers, and judicial is the ones who mediate between the activities of the two. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's based on entered apprentice, fellow craft, master mason.
Right.
Right. That's Blue House. The principles of the Blue House is being laid down, but it's coming out of the 32-degree Scottish Rite Red House from Europe. Free white persons in law, Scottish bankers, having established the Scottish Bank off the Scottish Rite Freemasons. These are the ones who not only are they establishing the three-party system or the three-part system, they're also in the process of instituting a centralized banking cartel. They're going to use this banking cartel to deplete us of our wealth using debt and inflation. Debt is told to you as interest rate or taxation. And the inflation is taking it by changing the value of the currency as you lower the value of the goods. I mean, you lower the value of the currency, it increases the value of the goods. So that's cutting it off the top and the bottom. Pretty soon they're going to cut you all the way out.
Damn. Mafia.
Right. So the three-part system had to be established in order to commercialize everything under the salvage right being applied through Uniform Commercial Code. What we know as the black codes is derivatives of the commercial code, right? Because it's to tell them how to handle the ones discovered dead walking around lost at sea. Right? C is a musical note. Right? So when you lost at sea, the only thing you can do is try to rise to E. Right? So it's a Mississippian blues connotation. To rise from C, class, to E is educated. Right? So when everything means something, but it don't mean anything until you say it means something. By establishing firm definitions, you establish the criteria by which everybody will follow the system according to the understanding of the language that's been defined for them. When they realize that they speak more than one language simultaneously, and then they start realizing they multilingual, because we don't just speak in words, we speak in body language, we speak in facial expression, right? We speak by altering our positions, what they call gestures. And these messages carry through in the form of the hieroglyphics. So we can tell each other the story and wake everybody up from the slumber. Right? So the George Washington, Crispus Attucks connection is the same as the Benjamin Banneker and Lewis and Clark.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Remember, they surveyors. Lewis and Clark is surveyors. Benjamin Banneker is a what they call it, a jurist, an astrologer, astronomer, and he's a navigator.
Mm-hmm.
Big Ben Bay escorted Lewis and Clark on their expedition
Mm-hmm.
because they were supposed to serve as Peter and Paul. But all the time, the one who was doing the stealing was the one that was hiding behind Peter and Paul because he was a Jew.
They end up killing that dude later, 3 years after that. 1803, Louisiana Purchase. 3 years later, they give a story that some Knights of Templar raided Benjamin Banneker's house, stole paperwork, and he went on the walk, came back, he died. I don't believe it seemed like to me he could have faked his death or something, Rod. What you think on that, Rod? Because the storyline
His story is the same as Nikola Tesla's. His story is the same as several other prominent figures back then who was at odds. Jacques de Molay, the leader of the Templars, died the same way. They tried to force them to give them the sacred Masonic word, right? But the word is in wide open. It's in plain sight.
Right.
And they thinking that the secret is concealed secretly. The secret is in the open.
Right.
Because everything has to be in the public domain if you're going to play in this game of the gods we playing in. When the masters come through, it's cleanup time. Right? And now comes Judge Dredd, the final judge. Right? They call me in to find out what the problem is and why it's still operating. I'm the chief of last resort. I'm the one you ain't supposed to want to see. And that's why I get so much hate. Because they know I'm either going to fix the problem or I'm going to blow it all up. Ain't no two in betweens. Either going to fix it or destroy it. This is fixable. Because everything around us now is predicated up on the maintenance of ignorance, collective ignorance. And so we have to move into a public educational format, right? We have to make the universe the new university. Our geology has to be walking the earth, right? Exercising our geography. So we use what we can in our environment in order to read the continuum. The continuum is the repeat patterns and cycles. Every time you observe a repeat pattern, you can see the exit shortly thereafter. But if you don't never pick up on the patterns, you can't never get out of the game. That's what Michael Jackson was telling us in The Wiz. You can't win. You can't get out of the game. You can't win because you have to play it to the end. In the end is when the marathon got to come to an end. It got to be a finish line somewhere, right? If it's a finish line, one of us gonna figure it out. So the Fairs Memorial is all of the Moors that was contracted under the Scottish Rite Freemason, 32 degree Scottish Rite Freemasons, to come from Europe and apply an interim jurisdictional government while we, the 50 chiefs, that's the 50 neckers. Or as Tupac would say, 50 niggas. Never ignorant, getting goals accomplished. Right? These 50 are on the mural as Inca chiefs with King Charles V.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to identify both sides of the war, the white pieces on the chessboard and the black pieces. Because if you're going to play the pieces, you got to know where your dog at in the fight. And all you got to do is be able to establish a heart link connection, and you can tell if you got a dog in that fight in order to do your work. I just got a dog in a whole lot of fights. I'm a dog man. Dogs flip guys, and guys flip with dogs. Mirror flipping. It's a code. Zigzag zig. Postgraduate, renewal of the lessons. Endgame is a resurrection. That's common sense, right? Don't worry about the boys in the hood. They still bad boys, even if they is on death row. Because if they in Minnesota, they just rude boys, right? And the rude boy in Jamaica is a shotter. A shotter is a shooter. But the shooter don't shoot unless he can see the target.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the code of the sniper apply. To minimize collateral damage, the sniper is taught one shot, one kill. No wasted ammo. Just like it's no wasted food, beans and bullets. That's how you feed the poor. Protect the people and feed the people. There's nowhere on this earth where we're supposed to need food, clothing, and shelter. Right. Nobody's supposed to be out in the streets sleeping when we got a blizzard coming in, unless they choose to be out there by their own free will of a competent and sound man.
Right.
Right. In that case, they coming out there, they playing survival war games with themselves to see if they can survive the condition. We understand that. That's a rites of passage in the manhood. Know the blizzard coming, and he got to go out there and have a shelter established, protection set up, and a way to feed himself, and all this got to be done before the blizzard dump on him.